Okay, I think that worked. Okay, so the next thing for us to talk about is this topic called like bind mounts. So let me set up the problem. So we have this Jupyter Minimal notebook. Uh, I can run it. Let's run it. And I think it was going to run on port 8888. I'm just going to guess that it is for right now. So I'm going to map my port 8899 to port 8888 in the container, right? This is where it's running it in the container, I believe. We'll find out. Okay, and it says it is, right? Notice, by the way, this is kind of confusing. If you like just copy this, or click on this, it's not going to work. Okay, the issue is that we're mapping it. This is 8888, but we're mapping it to 8899. Now, so this should work, right? Now that I'm going to 8899, we're all good. But one other thing I want you to just know if you're going through the reading or whatever is you need this token number. This is this guy, not this one. This is like this random string. This is our local host, 127.0.0.1, right? And you will need the token. So for example, if I'm like, oh, let's just, click on this, it's broken, and then I just put in the 99. This is a Jupyter thing, not a Docker thing. Jupyter is saying I'm giving you this like login token, but you need to pass this through. So if you just do 8899, I guess because I already logged in, it's letting me again. But last times, let's shut this down. If I don't provide the login token, just know it's not going to work. So let's just do this. We'll do 8899. See that? It's asking me for the token. Hey, where's the token for you to be able to access this? You should be able to see it, right? That's what it's saying. So I have to now, you could like copy and paste this thing in. I hope this would work. And now do login, and that works, I guess. Or the other way to do it, right, the way that I showed initially, is just copy this bottom line over, put it in the browser, and then change this to 8899, right? Change the port number. Okay. All right. So that was just some setup stuff. But here's, I guess, what we want to show. Like, say we want to use this Jupyter Notebook Docker image, right? We boot it up. We like do some beautiful work. Okay? And then we're done. Oh, and let's name this. And now we shut this down. And we boot it up again. All right? What you probably should know, right, because you know about containers, is that everything in the container is gone. So if I like refresh this, oops, I need to switch to 8899. Right? And I look for the work, it is gone. Okay? Because remember that idea as to how this stuff works, right? We have this, the whole idea is that we have these images, and this stuff can all be shared, right? These layers can be shared across different images, and anything we change is really copy on write. But then when the container shuts down, this layer disappears. And that way, when we boot up an image again, like when we boot up our Jupyter Lab image, we can be confident that nobody has changed it, right? We can lean on this thing and know that it's staying the same. So this is like a designed feature. Now, that leads to this problem of, well, how do I actually interact with these images and persist my changes, okay? So that's what we're going to show. So the way you do this is you can do this thing called bind mounting. And what bind mounting does is, let me share my, what bind mounting does is we have our laptop, okay? And inside and then in the laptop, I guess, we have this running container, okay? And this is where like the process is running. And then you write any changes, you make any changes, like you add a file, but the container dies. And with that, your files die. So instead what bind mounting does is it says, all right, you boot up this container, you add these files, but when you boot up the container, you're actually saying everything in a certain directory here, inside the container, I want you to actually live. We'll drop through this trap door and we'll actually live on your laptop. Okay? So I'm going to specify that anything I place into this directory in my container is going to actually live in this directory on my computer. So that's what we'll show next. So here we'll do this same command, docker run -p, and this time we'll add a -v flag, and it's always host to container. So it's going to be present working directory, that's this $pwd, to, and I actually don't know which folder. Sorry, I don't know which folder I need to, let's find this out for a second. When we go to this, let's find out which folder we're in. So basically what I want is everything in this work folder to be mapped to my laptop. So I can type in $pwd I guess I cannot. I can just type in pwd and it tells me home/jovian/work. So this is really the home/jovian/work folder. So what I want is everything in this folder to be mapped to my laptop. That way when I add like a notebook in here, it goes to my laptop. If I didn't have a Jupyter Notebook, how can I like figure out what directory I'm working in? I can do docker. We showed how to do this before, right? I can do docker ps, and then I can docker exec -it into this container, and then do bash, right? And lots of times I'll do, this is really what I would normally do. And then I'll do ls, and look, here's that work folder. See that? If I cd into the work folder, here's those two things that we saw over here, unentitled 1, unentitled whatever. So we know that these things are going to disappear right when I shut down the container, but that's fine because now we're going to fix that. We're going to say everything in this /home/jovian/work folder we want to actually really live on my computer. So the way we'll do that, let's be in this folder. We'll be in this lessons folder, and we'll say docker run -p 8899 to 8888-v, and that will say take this home/jovian/work folder and have it really read from the laptop's port of the present working directory. And I think I need to do $present working directory. And then finally, I need to specify the image I'm running, which is a Jupyter Minimal Notebook, I think. Let me list them. Docker image ls. Jupyter/minimal notebook. So just to go through this again, docker run Jupyter Minimal Notebook, but then I'm adding these arguments of 1, map the port from the containers 8888 to the host laptop's 8899, and map really like the file, like the directory, that anything in this directory I want to live in the present working directory, which is this lessons folder. So let's boot this up. And let's go to there. Do leave. And this time let's click on the, there must have already been something in that directory. Sorry about that. But let's add something else. Let's do select. Let's call this thing hello world. And let's type hello world. And then we can add whatever kinds of files we want. Let's make a new, can I make a new markdown file? Call it whatever, then hey everyone. All right. So now this time, when I shut this down, here's those files. Okay? Why did that work? Because once we did that -v argument, we're saying whatever's in this folder, I really want it to live in the present working directory. Right? Or actually, like I said, I think of it almost like this. trapdoor that really what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we think it looks like we're writing to this file in this /home/jovian/work, but really because of that -v argument, it's living in our present working directory on our computer. And anything that is like in that home/jovian/work in the container is also reading from this, right? Is also reading from our laptop. So for example, we can go the other, when I boot this up, it's going to have, like if I boot this up, it's going to have these 4 files again, right? Because anything from home/jovian/work is reading from the present working directory. It's like that trapdoor thing. So we go here, 99, right? And it has these same 4 files. If I delete them, they're going to be deleted on my computer because this thing is really on my computer. All these files really live on my host computer. So we just deleted them. Same thing. If I do a touch index.md, right, then once I boot this up, and let's just do touch index 1 or 2, right, then once I boot this up, those 2 files originally from my laptop live, we're going to see them in the container. Okay, so we're mapping the directories. It's called bind mounting. Here they are. See that?
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can set up permissions so that we cannot alter the files either from the host or the Docker, or is it like if someone deletes it from one side, it can be deleted on the other side too, right? Is there any permission set up on these
Well,
files?
it's not really deleted because the image is the same. All this is doing, the image is exactly the same. What this is doing is kind of like when you are, let me see if I can show this. The image is untouched. When it boots up though, this, the directory it reads from is really reading from this other place. But this, like what you want to persist, like what you care about holding on to is this underlying image. So in that you're not altering, like nobody's altering that. For you to alter that, like you have to rebuild the image. That's something we haven't learned yet. And one thing you remember is like, say you're kind of getting into like the development process a little bit, like what would this probably really be? Like, this would really be maybe like a code base. And so maybe you would just normally do the push to the code base when you're done, and then you'll, right? Like it's more of that process. Like you would, like we kind of don't totally know enough about it yet, but what you would do is you would be coding, you would see the changes work inside of the Docker container. And then maybe the next step is probably to like push to GitHub, right? And then, so there is still that process. It's not like you're altering the image for everyone right now. All you're doing is, this only exists. Like if we can make this disappear, or like not exist in our container simply by not bind mounting this, right? We're just saying, when we run it this time, this is each time you run the container, you specify if you want to set up that trapdoor or not, right? So in this case, we don't have the -v argument. So because of that, the image is just normal, right? Without any of those files in there, right? So we haven't altered the image at all. Other questions about this, right? So it's like Docker run, the final argument is always the image name, and then you can pass through these flags. So the first flag we learned mapped a port from the container to the host, and then the second flag we learned, this -v, maps, you can specify whatever directory you want, but I generally do the present working directory. And notice I made like this, I made a separate folder. Like if I did my whole desktop, that would be like place my whole desktop, all the files on my desktop inside of the Jupyter notebook. That would be very annoying and maybe take a little while. So instead I'm just making a folder that doesn't start off with anything in it, and do $pwd/home/jovian/work, right? And how did I know that, like which folder to map to? I did Docker, I can do Docker run -it bash to like dig around a little bit and see, right? That, okay, it's this folder /home/jovian/work. That's the one I want to set up the bind mounting for. So then I boot it up, right? And this will do that. Okay. All right, so this is one. Oh, let's see. Are the changes dynamic? If I make the changes on the desktop folder, will they be? Yes. So if you make the changes on the desktop folder, will they be reflected in the Docker container immediately? They will be immediate, like as immediate as possible. And the reason why is because you're not actually writing to the container. Like, remember, it's this image. You're literally, when you make a change in the container, what you're really doing is just setting up a trap door to your laptop. It's not actually doing anything here. It's just linking this to the folder in your laptop, right? So that's why it's as immediate as anything, because it is one and the same, right under the hood. Okay. Cool. So the next thing to talk about is volumes. This is very similar in both in practice and in concept. The idea is, okay, well, we are like, we have these files in here, but this is kind of like, it's a little just clumsy maybe, or susceptible to errors, because, I want to map the current working directory over to this, over to my container. But if I change my present working directory, right, like now it's going to map all this stuff over to my container. So an alternative to doing bind mounting, to doing bind mounting of like a folder, is you can bind mount this thing called a volume. So a volume is I just think of a volume as a little box, and it lives inside. It's another resource we get. You can see you can create a volume, you can remove a volume, you can list the volumes. I don't know that I have any volumes. Oh, I do have some volumes. I guess some of them were created out of the box when I downloaded some images. But anyway, what we can do is we can, instead of bind mounting to like a present working directory or a directory, we can bind mount to an image. And it's very easy to do. Bind mount to a volume. So what we do is we're still going to say anything in this container directory, anything in /home/jovian/work, right? We're going to map it. And basically all you need is just to not list a directory. We can call our volume whatever we want. Let's call it, Jupyter volume, right? And then press return. And now this is like a little box that lives inside of Docker. So now whenever I write something, in /home/jovian/work, it's actually going to live inside of the volume. So this volume starts off as empty, but here I'll rename it. Let's call this foobar. Let's just put in foobar here. And now when I shut this down, and I see we see Docker volume ls. See this? This is the new volume we created. Now we can use this thing because when I boot this up, I can boot it up and map this folder in the container to that box, right? This volume that we created. And so it's going to read from this. And because it's reading from that, it should still have that foobar file inside of it. See that? Now again, like this kind of maybe gets to one of Kali's points. Like, so now if I ever want to use other stuff, like use a separate volume, it's very easy. I can just name a new volume. I'll just call this thing like sample, and now I'm using a fresh volume that's linking to home/Jovian/work, right? And then we can go there. And this is going to start off as blank, right? And now I can just create a file if I want to, call it sample. And now you can choose, right? Like now you can kind of choose. Do you want to use the Jupyter volume, one or box, or do you want to use the sample box? So we can just switch. So it's the same image, right? But when we boot up the container, what we're doing is we're saying -v, simply a name. What's the difference? We're not doing the $pwd, where there's no slash here for a directory. So you're not specifying a directory, you're just specifying like plain text, a name. And that's creating a volume if it does not exist. If it does exist, it's going to link everything in this container's folder to the volume. So this was our original volume. So we should see, I think it was like the foobar stuff. Let's go to it. Yeah, this. Cool. So this is that original stuff we were working with. Okay. So this is, bind mounting to a directory, bind mounting to a volume, right? And it's not, all we do is we add this -v flag in both cases. It's the same flag. But when you do it for a volume, there's just no slash, no pwd, right, for the present working directory. It's just a name of a volume. If the volume does not exist, it will create it. If it does exist, it will link to this volume. Okay, and this volume exists inside of Docker, right? It's a Docker resource, the same way like your image exists inside of Docker. So this is preferred. What's preferred? Probably this. Yeah.
So Jeff, can you, when you create the volume, can you specify the location?
I don't think so. I mean, it lives where your Docker images live. It lives inside. Docker kind of has a storage for this. So it's
I guess another way. Yeah, another way. If you want to specify a location, just put there's no alias, but you can put the.
Not that I know. I don't know of a way to do that. You can.
Oh, you can just put your the whole path before the colon. You can do that. For example, you can
here
put whatever. Yeah, instead of
Yeah, but this would. Yeah, that's true. But that wouldn't be a volume. Yeah, that would just be your directory. Right? You know what I mean? You can do if you did
So basically, volume is created in the memory and then bind is created in the hard drive, right? That's what it is?
No, the volume is still in the hard drive, but the volume is in the hard drive, in Docker world, it on your computer. Let me show you. So on your computer, all the there's a folder for Docker. I don't. It's not where the application lives, but the same where the Docker files live. Right? And in there is a spot for the volumes, and they are saved to disk, but within Docker. Okay? And you can, if you want to manage it, you're using Docker commands to delete them, to create them, right? That's all of these live inside of Docker, and you can, from any directory, you can specify the volume, and it will connect to it, right, from any directory on your computer. So both of them are writing files. They're very similar in practice as well. Both of them are writing files to your laptop, right? It's just this one, the volume lives on your laptop inside of the Docker software, whereas the bind mount just lives, in some sort of folder, right? I've never found the volumes, but you don't outside of Docker. Like if I want to see the volumes, I'll just do Docker volume ls, right, and see the volumes. If I want to delete a volume, I'll just do Docker rm the volume name, Docker volume rm followed by the volume name, right? I believe you can even maybe deploy the volumes like to the cloud. I'm not sure. I've never done that, but like you can. So it's just, this is more contained inside the Docker universe, these volumes. But they're both just files. They live, they persist, they live on your computer. Okay. But if you did like a slash, then that's telling Docker that you want this, like if you did like once you do a slash here, you're telling Docker, hey, I want this to live in a folder, So you'd have to specify like the root path, and it's still it won't create a volume. It will assume there's a folder there. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, could you go back to the page, like the volume, you list all the volumes?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering those, like alphanumeric, like long string, like those.
Yeah.
Those like.
I don't know that these are like memory address or like or some sort of addresses. Maybe they are. They could just be hashes. Like these are just the ID. I don't know if there's really any significance. I was gonna look at if there's anything else we can do with. You can do inspect. Let's try that. Docker volume ls, and then we can maybe inspect this volume. Docker volume inspect sample. Okay, so maybe I guess it lives here. I guess it lives here. Is probably the path to it. But like I said, I generally, like, it's not designed to be, like, I wouldn't go in there and like delete it. I would just do Docker volume delete. Like, I wouldn't mess with any alternative way. Yeah. Cool. But that's what this is saying. It's like, okay, inside this Docker folder, we have these volumes. This one is called sample, right? And so I gave it that name. Cool. All right, that's really it. This, like I said, this lab I think is a little tricky. Well, it's really a practice in reading documentation more than anything else. That's why I keep it around.